Patreon page. Here we will provide you with the sports betting tips, picks, and information in order for you to become a successful gambler. We have 5 packages that I think really do an incredible job of providing the information tailored to you, what you want, and what your sports betting needs are. For more information, reach out to the TWSN team, but we have a ton of stuff coming your way. Content from fantasy football, sports betting for UFC, NBA, NHL, and of course, the NFL. We are so excited to be able to bring this service to you, and let us know if there's any more information you need.
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now because it's the place that it all goes down on.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Right Way Sports Network YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us here on the TWSN Tailgate. My name is Matt Levine and I am with my co-host Harrison Vapnek. How are you doing today, Harrison?
Doing awesome. We haven't been on the show together in a little while. Both of us, schedules have been around. Back in it with you. Got a great college football slate ahead. We had an awesome one last week. Today, the games aren't really as high intense, but the sport of college football, crazier things are going to happen. We're going to get some upsets. We're going to get some surprises, and that's what makes the sport so great. And so happy to be talking about it with you.
Always. This, college football is that sport where anytime games kick off, things can happen that we never saw coming. Like last week, we had a couple upsets last week that we'll get into later on in the show. That's why we all love college football. The fans are back this year. It's been a great atmosphere. But before we dive into everything, everyone, take a quick second, hit that subscribe button. Help us keep growing this YouTube page. We have live shows every day of the week. We have great content coming out, so make sure and do that. And also subscribe to the TWSN Betting Patreon. Harrison puts picks up there for college football. He hits at an alarming rate. This dude knows 60%. What he's talking about. 60%, guys. Like, this dude knows what he's talking about. Listen to Harrison. We're here to help you make money. So make sure you do that. But let's get into it. Every Saturday on this show, we like to do something called the Saturday Statement, where each one of us talks about something we want to focus on or see from the day. It's a tradition here on the TWSN Tailgate. So, Harrison, I'm going to start with you. What is your Saturday Statement for this week?
Who should I call out this week? Who's the statement? I'm going to kind of go, I've been kind of going intense in my statements, calling out coaches. I'm going to call it a coach again, whatever. Steve Sarkisian, how will you bounce back? They were in an excellent position to beat the Oklahoma Sooners last week. They were up 28-7 in the first quarter. They were rocking offensively. They scored in the first play of the game. They had a block punt. Casey Thompson was throwing the ball over the field. Bijan Robinson looked like he was about to go win the Heisman. And then Oklahoma made a great coaching change, a great quarterback change by their head coach, Lincoln Riley. They put Caleb Williams in at quarterback, swung that game, went back and forth. Texas tied the game. Oklahoma bursted for a long touchdown to win the game in the last play. My Saturday statement is Steve Sarkisian. You're playing a number 12 team in the country who's undefeated on your home field. How will you bounce back? We've seen coaches at Texas before. Tom Herman, Charlie Strong, after, they get a bad loss and they crumble down the stretch. This Texas team can run the table in the Big 12. They can still make a New Year's Six game. They can still win the Big 12 championship. Stay the course, bounce back from this game. Don't let one loss become 2 losses, become 3. Bounce back. You're at home. You're a favorite. Beat Oklahoma State today, Steve Sarkisian. That is my Saturday statement.
I love it. I love that. I thought about calling out Texas as well after the way they lost last week, Yep. But for mine, I am focusing on the Michigan State Spartans here. Do not take this Indiana Hoosiers team for granted. While they have not played up to their level this season, they can still beat you. This team came into the year highly ranked. And you know what? Don't overlook them. You have Michigan on your schedule next. I believe they have a bye week next week, and Michigan plays. Don't overlook Indiana. Come out, handle your business, remain undefeated. People still aren't talking about this Michigan State team, despite having a really good running back in Kenneth Walker. And in the Big Ten, this is wide open. It's wide open for Michigan State. So win this game, put pressure on Michigan next week to stay undefeated, and then have a really, really fun and awesome undefeated battle of Michigan in a few weeks. Give Kenneth Walker the ball and just play your game. Don't overthink this Indiana team. Just go out and beat them. Let people keep sleeping on you and show them what Sparty Strong is all about. Make sure and win this game today. That is my Saturday statement.
Love it.
Yeah, I love it. This Michigan State team is
fun.
So
it's a fun team to watch. Peyton Thorpe has been the biggest surprise star in college football this year. Kenneth Walker, Heisman Trophy candidate, maybe. And the receiver, is it Jake Naylor.
I think so.
He's been fantastic for them this year. Those three, it's the three-headed monster on the Michigan State offense. And you're going to Bloomington today. We'll talk a little more about that game later, but I like Michigan State.
Yeah, no, I do too. But we'll talk about that later. First, we got to recap a few of the games that happened last week. That was a crazy slate of games last week.
Unbelievable.
Let's break into the first game. A&M, Alabama. Alabama goes down. Their winning streak is over. A&M wins on a game-winning field goal. The 12-man go crazy. Harrison, what did you see from that game, and where do they go from here?
Man, my lock of the week was doing so well, and I took Alabama last week. I thought they were going to blow out Texas A&M. I'm like, Texas A&M has only scored more than 2 touchdowns in one game since Zach Calzada has been the quarterback, and it came against New Mexico. And there's no way Texas A&M is going to score more than 14 points. Well, to the contrary of popular belief, Texas A&M had 17 points in the first quarter. They turned on the Jets offensively. Zach Calzada, his best game as a college quarterback, 285 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Running the ball, if I told you Texas A&M was only going to run for 94 rushing yards last Saturday, I was like, oh, great, Bama won by 30. No.
Yep.
Texas A&M couldn't generate anything offensively rushing the ball. Isaiah Spiller won like 45 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. Kane ran for like 34 yards, but Alabama just couldn't generate much. Bryce Young made some mistakes. He threw a bad pick in the end zone. 369 total passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Brian Robinson ran for 147, but kind of empty stats. They were playing from behind most of the game, and when it mattered, Zach Calzada made some big plays, took the Aggies down the field, and Jimbo Fisher, that's why you bring him in and pay him the big money to leave Florida State to upset Alabama. If we finally can stop hearing, Nick Saban is undefeated against former assistants, that we can lay to rest.
Yeah,
finally,
that is over now.
It's long over, and it's a big loss for Alabama. Now there's a lot of pressure. They got to run the table if they want to make the college football playoff. They don't have the luxury of maybe winning out in the regular season and then losing a SEC championship to Georgia and still getting in. They got to run the table, and they still got some tough games left. So, but for Texas A&M, maybe a little hope, can get some wins going. They're 4-2 right now, ranked number 21 in the country. They're in Columbia today. Maybe they'll beat Missouri. They probably will, and see if they can take off from there, go to a 10-win season.
Yeah, no, I was watching the beginning of the game there, and A&M jumped out to a lead, and like most people probably thought, okay, they're not going to hold this. Bama, maybe they underrated A&M for like a couple seconds. A&M takes the lead, and then I'm starting to see A&M is not giving up the lead.
No,
and then it gets to the fourth quarter, and it's a very close game, and Calzada, that dude is tough, man. Like, he was taking hits from Alabama, he gets bounced up, like. Against Bama, he played his best game, and that doesn't typically happen. But it's kind of funny because we're all talking about what Bama didn't do and all this, but they lost by 3. Like, they didn't play a very good game, and they still only lost by 3 points in a hostile environment down at A&M in College Station. Like you said, Bama needs to run the table because this is a loss that they didn't expect. But credit to Jimbo Fisher and that A&M team. He said in the offseason, we're going to get him before Saban retires, and he did. So hats off to A&M.
He did it.
It's too bad they couldn't have beaten, Arkansas or something else, because then this
lost to Mississippi State.
This could have been a really special season for A&M. But what?
They could still turn it around and maybe make a New Year's Six bowl. Yeah,
and you know what? They have bragging rights over Alabama for the next year. That's something that not a lot of teams can say they have over recent memory.
Second win against Bama in 10 years.
Yeah, credit to Johnny Manziel with that.
Johnny football.
But yeah, let's move on to the other game we wanted to recap here. Texas, Oklahoma. What a game! Like you mentioned, Oklahoma came back, heartbreaking fashion for Texas. The last play of the game. What did you think about that game?
I thought this was one of the short list of greatest college football games I've ever seen. I had Oklahoma. I thought I've been high on them all year. I'm like, they're going to beat Texas today. Everyone's taking Texas. Oklahoma is going to prove that they're the best team. And then at the end of the first quarter, I'm like, oh my God, they're down 21 points. What was I thinking? And they turn it around. I said this on my Sunday show. That was the biggest win of Lincoln Riley's career, because if they lose this game, they're probably, because of how much of the chaos there is in the CFP race right now, a one-loss Big 12 champion is far from a guarantee. I know he's won, Big 12 championship games against teams he'd already beaten the year, but if he lost in a Red River rivalry game to a first-year coach, that's a really bad sign, especially when you have the expectations of having a top 5 team in the country and national championship aspirations. If you lose to Texas and a first-year coach and a team that was ranked number 22 in the country last week, something like that, they were done for. And they were down 21 points. He made a very bold decision, a ballsy decision, to take out his Heisman candidate quarterback Spencer Rattler and go into the true freshman Caleb Williams. And Williams was outstanding. running the ball. The first play he came in was he didn't run for a first down on fourth down. He ran for a touchdown, 65 yards, kind of swung the game. He threw for 212 total yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Kennedy Brooks had the best game of his college career. He ran for 25 carries, 217 on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Williams also ran for 88 yards and a score as well. Marvin Mims had the incredible catch in the end zone that tied the game in the 2-point conversion when they put Rattler back in. It was just so back and forth, and then it ended the Kennedy Brooks Wildcat touchdown run to end it. It was just a season. Oklahoma had struggled in so many games this year. I never given up belief in them when they beat West Virginia by 3 and they held on to dear life against Tulsa and they edged Kansas State. People were like, this Oklahoma team is not very good. I'm like, stay the course. This Sooner team has it. They're going to turn the corner. They turned the corner in the second half. They have TCU at home today. It could be a little sneaky. We'll talk about that in a second. But I like the move. I like the one that Oklahoma had last week, and I think that's going to elevate their season.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those people. I was not really sold on Oklahoma after the first few weeks. Going into the year, I was high on this team. Really high on this team. I mean, in our preview show, I had them number 1 in the college football playoff rankings for me.
Didn't you have them win the national championship?
No, I had Georgia winning. I had Georgia beating.
Winning,
I had Georgia beating Oklahoma, I believe, in the championship game.
Yeah.
But this Oklahoma team is so weird to me because they have so much talent, but they just can't seem to just put it together. And it's like I wonder maybe this is the game that really changes that for them because maybe Rattler wakes up. I mean, we don't know exactly what they're going to do with the quarterback. They're probably going to play both of them. But maybe this wakes Rattler up or something. I don't know, because that dude is talented. He just doesn't look like he cares half the time. And that's always been my problem with him.
Yeah.
But, hey, credit to Oklahoma. They came back. Heartbreaking for Texas. I mean, Texas needs something. I don't know. To lose that way to their rival, they were so close to upsetting this team. And, I feel bad for the Longhorns a little bit here.
So do I.
It's just they came.
But I think they're going to bounce. They have a chance to bounce back completely today, though.
They do.
They weren't supposed to win that game last week. Today they are supposed to win.
Yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be a good test with them against Oklahoma State. But let's get into the games today. We have our game of the day that we like to do here. We have the Kentucky Wildcats going to Athens, Georgia, taking on the number 1 ranked Bulldogs. Alabama lost, so the Bulldogs sit in the top spot in the rankings now, and you're going to look to continue this really awesome season. But Kentucky is not bad themselves. They're undefeated themselves. They're number 11 in the country. JT Daniels has been in and out of the lineup, but Stetson Bennett, he's been filling in. He's capable, and this offense hasn't skipped a beat whatsoever. And they continue to show out week to week. This defense is legit. This offense is good. This is the best team in college football, at least right now. What are your thoughts for this game, Harrison?
So Georgia's been my preseason national champion as well as you. I've been high on them. I picked them to win before the year. They've been number 1 in I tweet out my college football playoff rankings every week. They've been number 1 basically every week since week 2, I want to say.
Same.
I've been high on this Georgia team as anyone. Now they're playing number 11 Kentucky at home. This is. I know Georgia's played Clemson. I know they've played Arkansas, and they had the tough game last weekend against Auburn, which on the road, which is always a tough place to play where they've lost before. This Kentucky team, I want to go on a limb and say this is going to be their toughest contest so far. I know they beat Arkansas 37-0. Kentucky, though, it's kind of the recipe if they want to beat a team like Georgia. Kentucky commits the least amount of penalties in the SEC. They have not given up a single game where they've given up over 175 rushing yards. They have not let a single quarterback throw for 300 yards against them. They have a strong, stout defense, and what they do offensively is they control possession. Their running back, Rodriguez, is one of the best running backs in all of college football this season. I think this is the best running back that Georgia has faced, up there with Tank Bigsby they played last week with Auburn. I think Rodriguez is a little more explosive offensively, I think, catching out the ball out of the backfield. But you look at the other side and you see the best defense in the country who's giving up 5 points per game. It's not like it's week 2 and when they played Samford and Georgia Southern. They've played top offenses like Arkansas and Auburn, and Clemson's not bad themselves.
Arkansas just dropped 50 last week.
They shut out Arkansas. Arkansas ran 6 plays across midfield in that game. They're giving up 5. I think Kentucky will score more than 5 points today. At least I think they will. But that Georgia is just so explosive defensively. I think their defensive tackle is a Heisman candidate. They have star linebackers across the board. Offensively, though, it's interesting what they're going to think Stetson Bennett's going to start again. I'm
think
not
so.
sure like what the deal with JT Daniels is. I know he's been hurt, but like,
Doesn't
is
he
he
have
not ready
a
to come?
quad injury or something, right?
Are they just saving him for like November? Are they kind of just
Maybe
saving
they're
him for
just
like
being really
are they
cautious
saving him
with
for the
him.
Florida game? Because they're not asking Stetson Bennett to do much. He's run a very simple offense, but last week he hit a couple really nice balls to McConkley, their slot receiver. He had a big game. They're not asking Bennett to do much, which is why I think they're keeping Bennett. They're running the ball with Zamir White really well. James Cook has been fantastic. Their third running back, what's his name? Kendall Minton has been playing really well as well. It's an explosive Georgia offense. They have a good offensive line. Kentucky's defense is pretty good, but they've given up some big plays this year. Missouri had some. Florida was able to burst off a couple ones. They did a good job containing LSU last week. Kentucky, the recipe for Wednesday, it's a controlled possession against Georgia, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think it's going to be kind of low score. I'm taking Georgia to win it 27-7, but it's going to be closer than that. They're going to win by 20, but 27-7. I'm going Dogs today.
All right. I mean, Georgia's won their last 11 against Kentucky. And honestly, I don't really see that changing. Will Levis is going to have a game of his life if he wants to come into Athens and beat this Bulldog team. They don't really beat themselves, and that is something that they're going to have to continue if they want to beat Georgia. You know what? The last time I thought a top team matchup against Georgia would be close was Arkansas. I thought Arkansas was going to play them a lot better.
I was
than
wrong
they
on
did.
that one.
I was wrong. Arkansas got dismantled against this Georgia team. I'm not making that mistake a second time. Kentucky's a very good team. Georgia is a true national champion contender. I'm taking Georgia 41-17. Wow. This is not going to be a very close game. I think Georgia comes out and is like, you know what? You're not getting in our way here. Will Levis, sit down. Like, this isn't happening. This Georgia defense is just too good. What they've been able to do this year is incredible. And I don't see it slowing down at all. But we both got Georgia here, so let's keep this going. We talked about Texas. We got Oklahoma State going into Texas, both ranked. Oklahoma State's number 12. I mean, this Cowboy team is not getting talked about very much at all. It's kind of like they're kind of like Michigan State. They're not getting talked about, yet they're ranked number 12 in the country. Spencer Saunders has looked really good for this team. I believe last game he was a little shaky, but they ended up winning the game. What do you think about this game? They've only surpassed 30 points once this season. It was against Kansas State. So what are your thoughts?
This is why nobody's talking about Oklahoma State, because they're not a very good team. I'm going to go and say Oklahoma State they're very fraudulent. They beat Boise State by 1 point. They barely beat Baylor. They struggled with Baylor, who I don't know who Baylor lost to last week, but they didn't play very well at all. They're favorites against BYU today, which is besides the point. They beat Missouri State by 7. They edged Tulsa. This isn't a very good Oklahoma State team. You've mentioned they put up 30 points once this year. This is supposed to be the Big 12 where they're putting up a lot of points, and I don't think their defense is very good either. Spencer Saunders, their quarterback, he's solid. But this is the makings of Texas just running the ball over them. Casey Thompson, 388 through the air last week in the loss to Oklahoma. Bijan Robinson, I think Oklahoma Texas rather knows that he's kind of in the Heisman talk. Maybe just feed Bijan, give him the ball 30 times, have him run for 250, have some big runs. Oklahoma State, not a good defense. I don't know where Oklahoma State's going to get the points from is the question. Like, I know Texas's defense has holes, but it took a lot. Oklahoma needed to take everything out of that game last week to win. They needed their backup quarterback. They ran a couple of trick plays. The double pass was fantastic down the field. Yep. They ran a flea flicker. Oklahoma State's going to need to bring every stop out offensively, and I'm just not sure they have enough firepower. I like Texas to win this one 34-20.
34-20. See, that's what I worry about for Texas is how do they bounce back from that game last week? That was such a heartbreaking loss for them, and how quickly can they recover? I mean, Bijan Robinson is a star, man. That dude is special, and they need to just give him the ball and get out of his way, basically. I think this game's going to come down to the wire. And you know what? I'm very nervous about making this pick. I just can't shake the feeling that Oklahoma State's coming up with a big stop in this game. I don't know why I think this. I think Oklahoma State's going to surprise people, and they're going to go into Texas and win this game 27-24. It's going to be a close game, back and forth. I like Oklahoma State here. I don't know why. I really do. I think Oklahoma State's going to surprise some people today.
I can see that. It depends what they do. It depends if they can figure out some consistency offensively. They've had so many games where they've just struggled to move the ball down the field. They've had a couple of big plays. They really miss Chuba Hubbard. He's playing really well with the Carolina Panthers now, but they really miss him.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a good game, but I'm taking the Cowboys here, and you're taking the Longhorns. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But let's keep this going. We're going back to the SEC. We have Auburn going against Arkansas. Man, Arkansas, after such a good start, they got blown out by Georgia, and then they lost a shootout with Ole Miss, on that 2-point conversion. They proved me wrong. I didn't think they could score like they did last week. KJ Jefferson looked incredible last week. I know, like I said, they lost last week, but he looked different. I didn't think they could do it. What do you think about this game? Because I think it's going to come down to Bo Nix personally.
Yeah. What a story it's been for Bo Nix this season. It's been so weird where he had a really great first 2 games. Struggled a little bit against Penn State. They almost won that game.
Yeah.
Then he got benched against Georgia Southern, someone like that.
Georgia State, I think it was.
Georgia State, one of the two. No matter what, Bo Nix shouldn't be benched against Georgia State. They put in Travis Finley, and then the LSU game, Finley comes in for a drive, but then they put Bo Nix back in. He makes a Russell Wilson-like play, breaks out of a sack, throws a touchdown. They end up coming back and winning that game. And then last week, he really struggled against Auburn. To his credit, no quarterback has played well against Georgia, that is. Against Arkansas, I really liked Arkansas's defense at the start of the year. Then I saw what Ole Miss did to them last week. I'm like, maybe this isn't the offense we thought they were. And Georgia did the same thing. This game's going to come down to Arkansas's run game versus Auburn's run defense. Arkansas is the 4th best rushing offense in all of the SEC. Auburn's got the 3rd best rushing defense in all of the SEC. The running back for Auburn, Tank Bigsby, mentioned one of the best running backs in the whole conference. He's going to need to run the ball well against Arkansas, who is a good, up front. The receiver, Treylon Burks, he has 300-yard receiving games this year. Auburn's got a pretty good secondary. They were able to limit kind of the top receivers they've played so far this year. If they can be able to find Burks, if Jefferson's able to connect with him, it's going to be good for Arkansas. Auburn offensively, they got to run the ball. They have 2 good running backs. Bigsby's got to carry the ball well. Bo Nix has to play mistake-free football against a good defense. Bo Nix has done a good job of taking care of the football this year. To my surprise, I thought Bo Nix, so many times in the last couple of years, I've watched him made awful interceptions. Yep. He's done a good job holding onto the ball this year, making some smarter plays. He's definitely become a smarter quarterback as he's gotten older, which is always something you want to see from a quarterback. It just comes down to what the Auburn defense is going to do. I'm going to take Arkansas by a field goal. It's going to be a really fun game. 30-27 Arkansas. It's going to come down to the wire, but I trust them. I trust Sam Pittman a little bit more.
A little bit more. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it on this show. Bo Nix and his road struggles. I mean, he did go into Baton Rouge and he won. But a trend that's happening, this Auburn team's 4-0 when they get 400 yards of offense, and they're 0-2 when they don't. And the last 16 games, they're 15-1 when they hit that mark. So it's going to come down to Bo Nix. Can he go into Arkansas and beat this team? I mean, we saw Matt Corral do it last week, but Matt Corral is also different. He's not Bo Nix. This is a desperation type game for me for Arkansas, because they had such a good start to their season, and then they got blown out, and then they lost a heartbreaking shootout. I'm going to take Arkansas. I think it's going to be close. I'm going to say by like a touchdown, 30-23. I think Arkansas comes out and wins this game, gets back on track. But it's going to be a good game, though.
I think so also.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see. I want to see what Arkansas has. You know what I mean?
This is also an 11 o'clock kickoff. There's not too many good games other than Texas Oklahoma State, that is. So I think that there's going to be some national interest in this game. People are going to want to see how Arkansas reacts to both teams coming off a bad loss. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back.
No, I'm very curious to see which team wants to come out a little stronger. But we're going to stay in the SEC here. We're going to go over to the number 5 Alabama Crimson Tide going to Mississippi State. Alabama doesn't typically lose twice in a row, and Nick Saban is not going to let this team have that happen. I'm sure he ripped into them last week. They didn't really play that well, as we talked about. But the last time they lost back-to-back games was in 2013. And then when they lost to LSU in 2019, the week after, they actually played Mississippi State, and they beat them pretty badly. So
Tua got hurt in that game.
He did. So we'll see if history repeats itself. But what are you thinking for this game? Does Alabama come out and just be Alabama, or does Mississippi State have something miracle in them?
Alabama's going to be up 3 scores at the end of the first quarter. I feel good about Bama today. I felt good about them last week. Alabama's not losing 2 in a row. Alabama, for those who are subscribed to the TWSN Patreon, I explained it in my video this week. This Bama team is going to be so hungry. They're going to be so motivated. Losing is unacceptable in that locker room. The expectation for the Alabama Crimson Tide is to win and dominate every single game. That is how hard they practice. They go hard every week, and the games become easy for them. And when they lose to Zach Calzada and they lose to Texas A&M, who was, I believe, unranked last week, that's unacceptable in that locker room. And now you're going on the road to Mississippi State. Mike Leach is they really have not, other than beating LSU the first game last year, this Mississippi State team hasn't done anything. Will Rogers, one of the 3 or 4 worst quarterbacks in the conference. They're going to throw the ball every play. Mississippi State, I'd be shocked if they run the ball.
Their running offense has been like
one of the worst in the nation.
It's been awful this year, and
they're going to watch what Texas A&M did last week and just drop back and throw it every play.
Yep.
The Bama secondary is going to be hungry. They're going to get some picks. They're going to be ball hawks. They're going to be vultures stripping the ball out, getting to the quarterback, flying down the field. Brian Robinson, Mississippi State has no defense whatsoever. They're going to run the ball. It's going to be 21-0 in the first quarter. Alabama's going to win this game by 40 points, 52-12. Domination for the Tide, getting back on track because they know they need to.
Yeah, I mean, we have pretty similar looks on this game. I think Alabama's going to come out and just be Alabama. The Bulldogs have no business in this game. I mean, Mississippi State made LSU look like a good team a couple weeks back. And we all know LSU has not been very good this season. Their hope for them is that passing game exploits some of the weaknesses in the Alabama secondary. But that, like you said, that run game has been non-existent. And Alabama's just like you said, they're going to just run away. I got it 51-21. I think Alabama's just going to wreck this game. They don't lose 2 in a row, and they're not losing to Mississippi State.
Yeah, if Nick Saban loses a football game to Mike Leach, I think we have to, start thinking about the apocalypse coming. Right,
and I mean it's interesting because Mike Leach and he went to Mississippi State, Lane Kiffin went to Ole Miss, 2 completely different routes. Ole Miss is now one of the better teams in the country. Mississippi State isn't. So it's interesting because they were all hyped up together.
Especially when Mississippi State beat LSU last week.
Yeah, they beat them in week 1
last year. That was.
Yeah, but they also had a whole other. They had a amazing. Kellen Mond was there. They had a great quarterback, and Mississippi State. We're going to have to see where they go from here after this week. Exactly. But let's go over to BYU and Baylor. BYU stumbled last week. 4 turnovers against Boise State. They can still have a pretty good year and all that, but their shot at the playoff is probably dead now after losing to Boise State. But this is the chance to show a potential future rival in the Big 12. We mean business. For the Big 12, they probably want BYU to play Baylor really well, just to see, okay, this team's coming in. Let's see what they're made of. What do you look thinking about this game, and where are you going with it?
It's a tricky one because Baylor's a pretty good home team as well. They don't turn the ball over much. They're actually, over the last few years, very good at home compared to on the road. They don't make too many mistakes. BYU is a good defense. They struggle on third down. That's kind of the big key about them. And you mentioned the 4 turnovers last week were killer. BYU is a team that had college football playoff aspirations. If you look at their schedule, I think we talked about it earlier in the year, that they played all these Power 5 teams. And maybe if they went undefeated, lined up, and then they slip up against a not so good Boise State team. I don't think BYU is going to turn over 4 times today. Jaron Hall over 300 passing yards last week. He's pretty good, but I like Baylor today. They're a good home team. They don't turn the ball over. They run the ball. They're well coached. I'm going to go with Baylor. Kind of close game. It's a pretty dead even matchup, but I like the team at home. I think Baylor's just going to play sharp football. They'll win it 28-27. Very close game. Someone gets a late stop and wins it.
All right. I mean, Baylor's in the midst of a good season. Nobody really talked about this Baylor team. I mean, they haven't been very good the last couple of years, and they were ranked, I believe, was it last week or the week before?
Yeah, they were ranked last week.
Yeah. And, this Baylor team can force turnovers, and they're pretty good at home. And, they do have the most efficient pass defense in the Big 12. Really? That's not saying much because the Big 12 is just not great with defense. But, I think this Baylor team's better than a lot of people think they are. I think it's going to be a close game for a few quarters, but I do think that the Bears are going to come up with some key stops and maybe a turnover. I mean, BYU seems to be a lot better when they play at home. Rightfully so. That crowd is always loud and everything. So give me Baylor. I'm going to take Baylor. I want to say 34-23. I think they'll make a key stop and get like a field goal or something to extend the lead. But we're both taking Baylor, so we'll go with that.
Yeah.
But one of the most intriguing games, at least for me, we have 13 ranked Ole Miss going down to play Tennessee. The Lane Kiffin game here.
Lane Kiffin Bowl.
Yeah, seriously. Tennessee would love to beat Lane Kiffin. I mean, I know it's a long time ago when that happened, when he left for SC, but that program still remembers and all that. What do you think about this game? Ole Miss is coming off that shootout against Arkansas. So where are you going here?
I always like to mix it up, stir the pot a little bit, cook up an upset. Tennessee, I think, Tennessee's played some really good football the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
I saw what they did when I was on the show a couple weeks ago. I was watching them warm up against Missouri, and I'm like, this is a good football team. And they ended up scoring 62 points and running for over 450 yards. And, Ole Miss's defense, the first couple weeks of the year, does Ole Miss have a defense now? And then they play Alabama and they play Arkansas. They combine for 100 points. It's still a struggle for Ole Miss on that side of the ball. Tennessee's offense is figured out. Their quarterback, Hendon Hooker, the Virginia Tech transfer, has been outstanding. He's throwing for more than 75% of his passes the last few weeks. 450 yards throwing last 2 weeks, I believe. Yep. 146 rushing yards last 2 games. Their total offense is third in the SEC. Their defense is playing good. Their defense is what Ole Miss wishes their defense was at this point of the year, is what I would say. I know what Ole Miss can do offensively. I know Matt Corral and all their receivers and Drummond and their run game and their offensive line's been playing well, but this game's on the road. It's a tough environment. The Neyland Stadium, the Vol fans, it doesn't feel like 98 quite yet. They're still a couple years away, but Josh Heupel, I was very critical of the hire at first. He's winning some games. He's in line for a potential Coach of the Year in the SEC. They're 4-2 right now. A win today puts them one win away from clinching a bowl game, where Tennessee they missed a bowl last year. I believe the year before they were in one.
Yeah, I think they were.
But it's going to come down to Tennessee's defense getting stops, and I trust them more to get stops than I do Ole Miss. High scoring game. Vols pull off the upset home, 45-41. Hendon Hooker, big win, and the Vols, maybe they're going to be ranked next week before they play the Crimson Tide.
I mean, hey, you do like to stir up the pot, and you always get at least one upset on every show. Man, this game is one of the harder ones for me to break down, because I think they're very close. I think Ole Miss has the better quarterback. Would you say Matt Corral is still the Heisman favorite?
No.
I
don't know. We can talk about this for a second.
It's wide open.
I have today's October 16th.
Yeah.
No one's close. Bryce Young was the only one, and then I saw what he did last week. I'm like, he still could win it, right? I don't even know who the highest odds right now. It still might be Corral.
I think,
but right now, no one wants the Heisman. What's his name? Bryce Young had it for a couple weeks and said, "Oh, here's Texas A&M to have my Heisman trophy." Throwing a pick at the goal line. No, that's not going to win you the Heisman. He might still win it. His numbers are still fine, but kind of defensively, why not Jaquan Brisker of Penn State? He's playing really good. Why don't we give it to the best player for once? The Georgia's defensive tackle. His name always gets out of my head, but he's
Davis.
He's not putting up numbers, but he's been the most impactful player in college football this year. No one's been able to run the ball in Georgia.
Hey, it went to a wide receiver last year, so why not?
Exactly. I have if you want to tell me who's won the Heisman Trophy right now, no idea. Bijan Robinson, he's got to continue to run. He has to run for one of these backs has to run for 2,000 yards and 25 touchdowns if they won the Heisman. It's going to come down to stats at that point, but it's interesting. Someone just said Robinson. I figure he's talking about. I don't know if he's talking about Brian Robinson or Bijan Robinson.
Probably Bijan, I assume.
Both are a good guess, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely interesting, but I mean this Ole Miss offense, they're averaging 562 yards a game,
crazy,
third in the nation. That is crazy. And I will say, after that game last week, Lane Kiffin looked physically exhausted in his post game interview, and rightfully so. He looked like he just took a big sigh of relief, basically. See, we got Kenneth Walker here.
Yeah.
I'm all for Kenneth Walker.
You could name 10 guys right now, and I wouldn't be like, yeah, that sounds.
We don't know because no one wants to solidify their number one spot. No one.
DJ Ungungole, I'm not sure though. Him and Sam Howell, I'm not sure they're close. Everyone's Heisman darling.
Hey! Clemson beat Syracuse yesterday.
I don't think Clemson's covered a single game this year. I continue to fade Clemson. So. I'm like, why should
we haven't talked about Clemson since probably week 2?
Why should we, man? Why are we talking about the third best team in their own division?
I agree.
Because they're not as good as Wake Forest.
I agree. Let's get back to the Tennessee game for a second, though.
All right. We're good.
But yeah, this Tennessee offense has been really good, as you mentioned. It's going to be a long night for these defenses. And honestly, like you said, it's going to be a shootout. I was tempted to go with Tennessee because they're at home, but I don't know. I'm going to give Ole Miss the slight edge because I do like their quarterback a little bit more. 47-45.
Okay, so we basically have the same game, but just whoever's
just
we
reverse.
have different players scoring the touchdown, different color uniforms scoring a touchdown at the end.
Essentially,
I have
yeah.
What are the colors? The
orange and white.
The crim. What is it? What do they call there? They call the
checker?
burnt orange, right?
Yeah, burnt
Something
orange.
like that. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, we both have very close high scoring games. I think it's gonna be a close, kind of like the Ole Miss Arkansas game was. Another fun game to watch. But let's keep this going. We have Arizona State and Utah. Are the Sun Devils the best team in the Pac-12? Because USC, UCLA, they have been very bad, especially USC. Jaden Daniels needs to limit his turnovers, but he's played relatively well. Arizona State's on a 3-game winning streak where they're averaging 33 points a game, and the defense has only been allowing 16. And in order to beat Utah on the road, this trend's going to need to continue. So where do you see this game going?
I still think
Mr. Utah himself.
I still think Oregon is still the best team in the Pac-12 for answering your question, but no one wants to be. They barely beat California last night, who's like 1-5, I think, at this point of the year. Utah's going to win this game tonight, man. I'm riding my Utes.
You getting the key back?
The key, it's like I can't reach right now. It's tied to the ceiling. I need them to win one more big game, and then I reach down for it, and then they're still contending in the Pac-12. I think they've only lost one game in the Pac-12 this year because they lost to BYU.
Yeah.
It's been a weird year for Utah. They had a player pass away in the middle of the season. It's from an emotional aspect, it's very hard to come off that.
Is this the first? I think might be the first home game since that happened.
I think they played last week at home, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I think they were playing in USC last week.
Okay, they played Washington. I know they've won their last 2 games. They beat USC and Washington State the last couple weeks. They're starting to bounce back. But look, in emotional, that's one of your teammates. That's one of your brothers in the locker room. To lose a guy like that, it's not something that can
2 years in a row because they lost their running back the year before too.
Yeah, it's really emotional for them, and they're starting to figure out things to get back on track. And they're a pick 'em today at home against Arizona State tonight. I think Arizona State's a good team. They slipped up against what is it?
BYU.
Just BYU. No, yeah, they
blew UCLA out.
They came back and beat UCLA. I'm not as high on the Arizona State team as Ravasio is. He's not here tonight or today. I'm still riding Utah. Utah is going to win this game. They're playing better football the last couple weeks. I still think they can run the table in the Pac-12. I'm going to keep picking them to win. I think I think this may actually be their first home game since the passing. It's going to be an emotional atmosphere regardless, especially home night game. In a pick 'em, I'm going to take the home team. I'm taking Utah by a field goal, 24-21.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be an emotional game for sure. That's rough. 2 players within 2 years. That's just so sad.
Yeah.
And these players are going to want to come out and
that's a good program also.
Yeah, no, Utah's been really solid the last couple of years. They're coming off a rout of SC last week. And they came into the season as a sleeper team. I know you were very high on them.
Yeah, I thought they won the Pac-12.
If they can
they're still good.
Yeah, I mean, they can. The Pac-12's open, except for in the north with Oregon. But if they can beat Arizona State, that's a quality win that can help salvage this season. But you know what? I'm going with Ravasio on this one. He was right. Like, when he said Arizona State was going to win the Pac-12, I looked at him like he was a little crazy.
I did too.
Arizona State. USC was highly ranked. UCLA, there's Oregon. So I think Arizona State is just a little bit better. And even though they have to go to Utah, give me the Sun Devils by a score. I'm going to say 30-27. So by a field goal.
Okay.
Close game.
We both think it's a field goal game. I'll take the
it's going to be a good game because I think, the emotions are going to be running high for Utah, and that's going to help them. But I do think Arizona State is a really good team. Herm Edwards has these guys playing really well, and we'll see if they can keep it going. But let's go to the game that I called out for my Saturday statement. We got the Michigan State Spartans traveling to face the Indiana Hoosiers. Michigan State is kind of the team that, much like Oklahoma State, nobody really saw coming, and they don't seem to be slowing down. But as I mentioned, this could be a trap game for them. They have Michigan looming on that schedule next. And while Indiana has not lived up to expectations, as I mentioned, they still shouldn't be taken lightly. Indiana hasn't been the team many people thought they would be. but that doesn't mean they can't win. They're at home, and they need to limit a big playability of the Spartans and continue to do a really good job on third down, which is what they've done. They've been a pretty good third down team on defense. They do this, they can probably win this game. Where are you going with this game, and what are your thoughts?
We saying that like it's a trap game for Michigan State. How many weeks in a row are we going to say this? We said the same thing last week when they played Rutgers on the road. They beat them easily. We said the same thing when they beat Nebraska. That kind of was a trap game. They won it overtime. We said the same thing when they played like Western Kentucky at home. I'm like, why are they only a 10-point favorite? They crushed Western Kentucky. Even I think it was smaller than 10 points. We said it when they went to Miami, like, oh, Miami's a good team. No, they're not. Michigan State beat them easily, and they were an underdog in that game. I was all over Michigan State. This is going to be a struggle for Indiana. Like Michael Penix is not the same quarterback he was last year. He's been playing injured. He's banged up. He said he was questionable going into this week. I think he's going to play. Michigan State, they don't force a lot of turnovers, but offensively they rock teams, because we talk about the three-headed duo, the three-headed dragon at the start of the show. Kenneth Walker, the running back, Jalen Naylor, the receiver, their quarterback, Peyton Thorpe. It's hard to contain this team. It's hard to stop them because they can beat you through the air, on the ground. Peyton Thorpe can take it himself. It's going to be a struggle for Indiana to get stops. Indiana, they're 0-3 in the Big Ten, and their only wins so far are outside conference. I know they beat Idaho, and I think they beat some other small school, and it wasn't by a lot from what I recall. Look, Indiana team struggles to put up points. They got shut out by Penn State. Like this isn't a very good team. I also think they might be looking ahead because Indiana has a big game next week at home against Ohio State under primetime, which is their first home night game in a while as well. Also Cincinnati as well, I should say. I think they might be looking a little ahead to Ohio State, thinking maybe we could win that game because they kept it close with them last year. But no, Michigan State, I like them a lot. I think they're going to win with easily by 2 touchdowns. Let's go 31-17, Sparty. And they keep their season rolling. They got some big games coming up as well. They're a contender in that Big Ten West.
You literally just took the same score I have, 31-17.
Really? Good line, single leg.
Yeah, seriously. No, Michigan State's going to win this game. I really hope that they don't overlook Indiana. Kenneth Walker is in the conversation for the best running back in college at this point. Him and Robinson. I don't see this Spartan offense slowing down against this Indiana defense. This Spartans team looks special, man. Like we'll see what they do next week against Michigan, assuming they beat Indiana. But this Spartans team is pretty good, and I'm excited. I want them to keep winning. I really want to see what they can do against Ohio State, because this team looks like they can make some real noise and maybe get to the playoff if they continue winning. Their fate's in their hands. They play all the teams that they need to play. So win those games, lose one of them, and you might be in if you go and win the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's so tough, especially for all those teams. They all have to play each other. We're getting basically over the next month and a half. We're about to get a Big Ten, like basic. What's it called? Like a round robin. I was thinking pretty much. I was thinking 2 R's, like Red River. I'm like, no, that was last week. Where it's a round robin. This is Michigan State's schedule coming up. They're at Indiana. Then they got the bye week. They're hosting Michigan. They're going to Purdue, which is never tough. Ask Ohio State about that. Hosting Maryland, at Ohio State, home Penn State. Michigan State, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State all have to play each other for the next month of the year. And then Wisconsin's in there. They're going to play Iowa. Iowa is basically sitting in the Big Ten East like, oh, look at us. We're playing Purdue and
we're
Minnesota,
chilling over here.
And we're in the driver's seat on the way to Indianapolis. But who are we going to face? These 4 teams who are just going to beat up on each other. If I'm Iowa right now, just take care of business. Take care of business. If the Hawkeyes watch the chaos unfold in the Big Ten East or the Big Ten West, that is, and then we'll see how it happens. Yeah,
it's definitely going to be an interesting next few weeks. What we like to do on the show is talk about games that we want to keep an eye on for the day. But before I get to that, I just have a question for you. What do you think about Cincinnati? I know this is not planned at all. I'm throwing this at him out of nowhere here, but I'm just curious because I was at the Cincinnati game last week against Temple, and that crowd was loud, and they're ready to actually have some respect on their name. You know what I mean? Like, I know Notre Dame's not that great. I know Indiana's not that great, but like we all said, if they come out and beat those teams and they win, they go undefeated, they deserve to be in. And I'm on that boat still. If they run the table here, they deserve to be in, because they didn't get the respect last year. They finally played some teams, especially going into Notre Dame, which is never an easy place to play. I don't care if Notre Dame's good.
I picked Notre Dame to win that game.
Yeah, I picked Cincinnati to win that game. Like it was a good game, and I just want to see your thoughts about this Bearcat team.
I've been known for kind of discrediting Cincinnati. Even in my rankings last week, I had them at 4, and people thought that was too low. I almost put Bama ahead of them, even though Bama's a loss and since he's undefeated and wins against Indiana and Notre Dame. I think Cincinnati is going to lose a game before the season ends.
Really?
I think they're going to slip up. I know this team is good. I know this is a good team. They have a veteran quarterback. They have one of the best defenses in college football. They're so well coached. My gut. I'm going to do bold prediction. Look at the camera. Cincinnati will lose before the season ends. Cincinnati will lose before the playoff. I don't think they're going to run the table. I don't think this team's. I think they're very good. They have an easy schedule. Also, I have a feeling they're going to slip up. I don't think it's today against UCF.
Yeah, I don't think
when
so.
they play SMU in a couple weeks, I know it's at home. I don't think the Cincinnati team is good enough to go undefeated, is what I'm saying. It reminds me of BYU in Boise State in 2009, where they had the big wins earlier in the year. They beat Georgia, maybe Virginia Tech, one of the two.
Yeah.
They had a win early in the year, and they're like, oh well, if we run the table, we're going to the playoff, and then they lost to Nevada. This is Cincinnati's remaining schedule. They're home UCF. They're at Navy. They're at Tulane. They're home Tulsa. They're at South Florida. They're home SMU. They're at East Carolina. You look at that and say, oh, who are they going to lose to? SMU is all undefeated. They're a pretty good team.
I feel like that South Florida game could get them.
No, South Florida's awful.
I know, but like
No,
anytime you have to go down there, like you just never know.
I have a feeling Cincinnati is going to slip up somewhere along the way. It could be today. Dylan Gabriel can move the ball.
Yeah.
UCF, Gus Malzahn has won games in his career. It might come today. They're a 21.5-point favorite at home. Maybe they're overlooking Central Florida a little bit, who I think they lost last week too. They edged East Carolina last week, I believe.
Yeah,
I'm going with close for Central Florida. It's close for Cincinnati today against Central Florida. They're only won by about a touchdown. I'm going like 30-23, maybe 37-30. They can score some points, but Cincinnati, if they're going undefeated, they're in the playoff. But I'm not sure.
I'm just saying if they do go undefeated,
if they're undefeated, they're in. I don't care. They number 4, number 3, 2, 1.
I think
they're
get in too.
They're in, definitely, 100%.
We need to stop disrespecting
They've earned it.
Team. If they do want to go undefeated, we need to stop disrespecting them. Put them in the playoffs, see what happens. I mean, I think they're going to get wrapped by Georgia.
I think the committee knows it also.
But like this Cincinnati team deserves some.
They're going to play in a New Year's 6 game. Like even if they lose a game, they're still going to make a New Year's 6. But I think they're going to lose maybe the American Championship, maybe they'll lose to SMU. But I don't know. Gut feeling says this team's going to lose. Crazy.
I just wanted to see your thoughts on that because that's something a lot of the fans at the game were talking about. Like we we deserve to be in if we undergo to Phoenix. I just wanted to see. But Harrison, what are some of the games that you think are going to a little underrated or that people should keep an eye on today?
Well, I was going to talk about Cincinnati, Central Florida, but you led me to that one.
Sorry.
Good thing I have my backup. One of my favorite teams in college football this year. I talked about this team as one of my sleepers before the year. I like them a lot. They're a dog at home. It's the Boston College Golden Eagles.
I knew you were going to talk about Boston College.
I love Boston College. I saw them play against Missouri. They won a crazy overtime game. I've fallen in love with them since. I know their whole roster. It's amazing. They have a great running. They have 3 very good running backs. Travis Levy's the better one. Pat Garwo the third. They have a third guy from my hometown. Gainwell is really very good as well. They have a strong offensive line, one of the best in the country. A consistent defense. They lost Phil Jurkovich for the year, but Phil Grosso's done a great job stepping up. They're a 3-point dog today against NC State. NC State lost at Mississippi State. They're a different team at home than they are on the road. I'm taking Boston College to upset. Keep an eye on that one. NC State at home today. It's also a tough environment to play in. That Boston College fan's going to be rowdy. Tonight, I'm excited to see what they look like. One more game, kind of keep my eye on. Florida LSU. Ed Orgeron kind of needs this one. If he can upset a top 25 team at home, he might
save his season. He might save his job.
Where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's a lot of smoke coming from Baton Rouge right now. And if he can upset a top 25 team at home, that'd be huge for him. They're a double-digit dog. I don't think Florida's very good. Let's see if LSU can pull off an upset today.
It's going to be tough. They lost most of their top players.
Yeah, no Stingley.
The year. It's going to be tough for LSU.
But the boosters don't care about who's out; they care about the coach.
Oh yeah, no, and unless he wins the majority of the rest of the games, it's sad because Orgeron. I like Orgeron, but I think he's going to be out. But I have 2 games. One, just quickly go through. I have Nebraska taking on Minnesota. Minnesota has so much bad injury luck for their running backs, man. Like,
yeah, it's awful.
First they lose Ibrahim, and then last week they lost their running back Trey Potts, and like, I know Minnesota's not that great of a team, but that's tough because they don't have a strong passing game. And, Nebraska, they can't win. Like they show they just can't win when they need to. And Scott Frost knows this, but it's something he has to give, right? Something has to give for this Huskers team.
Yeah.
And I think today is going to be the day. I think they're going to go beat Minnesota in Minneapolis. And then another game, Iowa State and Kansas State. These teams
We kind of forgot about Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, they had bigger goals, and now they find themselves unranked. They're going against each other. This is a really intriguing matchup. I mean, Kansas State has a good defense that could cause the Cyclones some issues, but they still have Brock Purdy. They have Breece Hall. We a few weeks ago we were talking about Iowa State is potentially making the playoff, and now they're unranked. They have a few losses, and no one's talking about them. Like you said, you forgot about them. So I think this could be a good game because these teams were both ranked a couple weeks ago. We'll see what happens in Kansas State.
I'm excited for it.
I think Iowa State's going to pull it out, but it should be a fun game to watch.
Yeah. One last thing. Well, I forgot about something.
No, go for it.
Keep an eye out on Purdue today. I've said this a lot of teams before. I think I said most specifically, the one I remember most was when Toledo played Notre Dame. Watch out for Purdue. They're at Iowa. Don't be surprised if they're in it. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you heard it here first. Purdue. We'll see. Anything else, Harrison, before we wrap up?
Nope. It's been another awesome show. Thanks for everyone for following along. Make sure to subscribe to the TWSN Patreon. Everyone nailing our picks. NFL has been hot. MLB playoffs have been great. My college football ones have been winning.
Yep.
Knock on some wood right now. We're going to keep it going. Subscribe to the TWSN Patreon. Best bets, all that coming.
Like I said earlier in the show, listen to Harrison. He knows what he's talking about. He's great with the bets. But guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Make sure you download the TWSN mobile app we have. Don't miss any content that's put out by our writers, analysts. We have content coming out every single day from these guys. They're great writers and they have great opinions on everything. Like Harrison said, join the Patreon, make some money. Let Harrison help you make some money here.
Yes.
He loves making people money.
Feel great about 5 good picks today.
Exactly. See, there we go. But thank you guys again for joining us. Enjoy all of the college football games this weekend. And we will see you next week on another episode of the TWSN Tailgate. All right, we are out. Have a good one.